Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Cynthia Travers. I'm a Marine Science instructor here at the Coast Guard Academy. I'm originally from Maryland, so I'm from the same coast where the Academy is. I graduated in 2006 with my degree in Marine and Environmental Sciences. Since my graduation, I've served on 2 different cutters, first on an icebreaker based in Seattle, Washington, also on a patrol boat in Alaska. I was able to attend graduate school funded by the Coast Guard, and then as a payback tour following graduate school, I've come here to the Academy to teach. Most of the classes I teach are based in physical oceanography, so I tend to work with the 3rd class, 2nd class, and 1st class cadets. Not very much with the 4th class, but once you get into your program, I start to teach some of those more specialized classes here at the Academy.
Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Christine Rostowski. I'm a 2007 graduate of the Coast Guard Academy. I got a degree in operations research out of the Academy and was sent to Sector Seattle for my first tour, where I conducted vessel inspections. After my first tour in Seattle, I went to graduate school, once again funded by the Coast Guard at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I studied industrial engineering. And my payback tour was also to come back here and teach in the Department of Mathematics. I currently teach the computer programming classes and calculus classes here at the Academy.
Can you talk a little bit about the typical class size?
For most classes, specifically in the science department, once you get up into the undergraduate classes, it's very small. I teach 2 current lecture sections that have 13 and 14 students each. We also have lab sections specifically in science, and those tend to be a little bit smaller for the specialized classes. Once you're still in the 4th class realm of things, when you're taking the required classes for everyone, things like chemistry 1 and 2, calculus 1 and 2, some of the basic English and history, humanities classes, those may be a little bit large. But on the whole, at the Academy, you don't have any 500-person lecture classes that you'll be taking, mainly because we don't have that many students, and especially not in your incoming class as a freshman at the Academy.
What types of projects do students do, or capstone projects as we call them?
In the math department, when you are in an OR major, you do a capstone project as a senior or first class cadet. Those projects generally come straight out of the Coast Guard, meaning the Coast Guard has a problem and asks our students to solve it. So some prominent problems we've tackled in the past was the best search pattern airplane could take, one of our Coast Guard assets could take, in order to find semi-submersible drug boats which are running from the Colombian border up into the States and delivering narcotics. So we took the data as a department and we gave this to our first class students, and they analyzed the data and were able to give some useful information to our policymakers on how they could more effectively combat the drug trade coming out of Colombia.
And that's really a common thing too in majors that do have a capstone project. The Marine Science major currently does not, but if you look at many of the other majors, these capstones are designed to be related to the real Coast Guard. And many cadets find that very fulfilling, to be able to work on something, a project, a problem that relates to the fleet that they are soon going to be entering. So it's a very important aspect of the academic program here, is to connect it to your eventual occupation that you're moving towards.
If a student is struggling academically, is there any support available to help them?
In the math department, we hold a weekly CAP session, which is basically a 3-hour block where any student who wants to get help will get help from an instructor from the math department. So not a TA or a teacher's aide. You will actually get to meet with an instructor, probably your current instructor for that course, and you basically have 3 hours in which you can ask them any question. Also, instructors are made available throughout the week, so anytime they're not teaching, they're basically available for help, which is very uncommon in the collegiate world. Normally you have office hours as an instructor, so maybe in a normal college, an instructor might be available 3 hours one time during the week, whereas at the Coast Guard Academy, our instructors are available for help anytime that they are not teaching. So we have a lot of options for any student who might be struggling to get help if they want it.
Can you talk a little about typical class schedules or the types of classes students would take?
During your class year or your freshman year at the academy, everyone takes pretty much the same classes. The exception to that is if you do take a validation exam and successfully pass that exam, you may not need to take some of the foundational courses like maybe Chemistry 1 or Calculus 1. Most students take physics in their sophomore year, their third class year, so that's another class that's kind of a general requirement. But there is a core curriculum of classes that everyone at the academy will take. And those are designed to give you some breadth in addition to the focus that you will get in your major itself. So everyone will have some experience with U.S. history. Everyone will have some experience with criminal justice, maritime law enforcement, because those are very primary missions in the Coast Guard itself as a service. So there are classes that everyone will take, but then you'll also be specializing, usually once you get into your sophomore through senior years. That'll be predominantly your major-related classes. Still a little bit of mix of classes like nautical science thrown in there. You'll have nautical science every year as a cadet so that you can develop those skills and then also get to practice them during your summer assignments as a cadet.
Are cadets given academic advisors to help guide them through their curriculum here?
Yes, whenever you enter, you declare a major, and you're not set in that major when you enter, so it's okay if you're unsure to just pick what you think you are interested in, and you can change your mind later on. And so you have an academic advisor your entire 4 years at the academy, and if at some point you choose to switch majors, your advisor will actually help you with that, your current advisor will help you with that transition to finding your new advisor in a different major.
And that's also an important point. Academic advisors do not get upset if you decide that you want to go into a different major. Our job as an advisor is to help you find the major and the topic that you are most passionate about studying. So I had an advisee who came to me and thought I would be heartbroken and very upset that they wanted to change majors, and that wasn't the case at all. I was happy that they had found something they were really passionate and interested in studying. So we're here to help, not to make your life more difficult.
So cadets are allowed to change majors if they pick.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
If you pass the validation exam for a course, how does that affect your schedule?
Okay, if you do validate a course, you get more free electives at the end. So basically the way your schedule is set up is you have your core courses and everyone kind of stays on the same track. But if you, for instance, validate Chemistry 1, what that will do is you'll be able to take another class in its place, and at the end, when you're a senior or a junior, you might have another elective open up, so you can take another class that interests you here at the academy, or even if we don't offer a class that interests you here, we have an agreement with College, which is the college across the street. So if they have something that interests you, you can take an elective there across the street. So we have a lot of options.
Hi, Ron Anderson. I'm one of the civilian faculty. The faculty made up of permanent military, rotating military, and civilians like myself. I teach mechanical engineering. I'm a full professor. In mechanical engineering, for instance, all senior faculty are fully licensed with professional engineering licenses. All of us have industry experience. Most of us, if not all of us, have teaching experience before the academy. This is year 6 for me at the Coast Guard Academy. I've been teaching for over 20 years, which means I started at age 7. One thing you need to know about the 8 majors here at the Coast Guard Academy is they are top-notch. So I don't have a military background, but I have a very strong academic background. And our mechanical engineering program is one of the best in the country. We see that in the ratings. I have no faith in the ratings, but it actually happens to be true in this case. Absolutely phenomenal. One of the questions I get a lot on tours is what makes it different. You heard about our small class sizes. So someone like myself works directly with the students. I'm here, Friday afternoons and Monday mornings, times I would not have been here at my prior 2 or 3 institutions. I am a federal employee, and that's part of the job, and it's a job that I love. Some of the things, though, that make us unique. When you hear about our small class sizes, we tend to have a lot more laboratories in engineering than you would have. It's probably true for the other majors as well, but in engineering compared to other schools. Laboratories are extremely expensive to run. They're very, very important, but extremely expensive to run. So to have someone like myself at a full professor rank to be in a lab with 8 is not typically done. It's even more extreme than that. We have 3 lab faculty, for instance, in a lab class that I teach. In any given lab, there's at least 2 of us, if not 3 faculty in the lab. We're only assigned to our own lab, we go to each other's to give that individualized attention, and that is fairly unique. The other thing that is also very special about our program is we focus on the theoretical, the computer applications, and really the hands-on practical. So theoretical applications, for those of you who are currently taking lots and lots of academic classes, are the ones you're falling asleep during. I happen to love it, but I'm an academic. The computer is to really relate the theoretical to computer applications. So whether it's a mathematics program like MATLAB, or if you've seen things like SolidWorks, 3D modeling, 3D parts, we can assemble them, test them. We do a lot of that in our program. The third part, of course, would be your physical experiments, which could vary from really great classes in chemistry or physics to mechanical engineering, beginning of the sophomore year, we call third class year, learning hands-on how to work in a machine shop. So we have no expectation that you've done it before, but in your first semester, sophomore year, every mechanical engineer, for example, and this is common with majors, learns how to use a metal lathe, a mill. You eventually learn a little bit about welding. If you've seen schools with 3D printers, we have 4 different types of 3D printers, and you will start using it at the beginning of your sophomore year and continuously through the years. Our capstone projects are unbelievable. You heard a little bit about it. In engineering, for instance, they're typically sponsored by the Coast Guard. Once in a while, it might be a different agency, and you have to get the project to work. You're working with real clients on real projects. In mechanical, for instance, and all of engineering, it goes on for an entire year. You use the design process, and you're trying to get a handle on what it's like to do a real project. The difference here is you have your faculty and staff for support and to guide you through the process. So that's just a little bit of a taste of what we do in capstone.
What are some jobs within the Coast Guard where a mechanical engineer might serve?
Sure. You really hear it on a couple of different levels. It's sort of the general, you can do any job with any major, but as you get into your specialties, a lot of the times where I hear graduates write back to me and say, I'm really glad I have an engineering degree. Sometimes when they just have to figure out a system that's failed on their cutter. They're on a ship, something has broken, and they realize, hey, this part from here can work with that. I've had a lot of great feedback from my graduates who are aviators and how understanding engineering has helped them in aviation. I've seen quite a bit visiting folks in marine safety, where they'll see a new design come across their desk to approve a new design for a cruise ship or a unique boat that might use fuel cells, hydrogen, or the like, and they're very happy they have that very, very technical background. One of the things that's very unique about the Coast Guard Academy, and speaking for the 4 engineering majors, there's 2 parts to an engineering license. I mentioned that the faculty typically have a professional engineering license. The first part is called the FE, Fundamental of Engineering Exam. If any of you have parents who are old like me, it was called the EIT, Engineering Training Exam, in the old days. Most schools, very few students actually take it, and then the pass rate is a fraction of that. In engineering, the number of students that take it, usually up to, from 95 to 100%, will take it, and the pass rate is somewhere between 95 and 100%. So we do very, very well with that, which helps them both in the Coast Guard as well as those who transition to civilian jobs afterwards.
Can you talk a little bit about the Academy Exchange program that we run with other academies?
Absolutely. The Coast Guard Academy, working with the other military service academies, the Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, and West Point, all run an exchange program that takes place involving cadets who are in their junior years of the academy. So that would be as a second class cadet. And for a semester, a cadet who is accepted into the exchange program will actually attend classes and be pretty much a full-fledged member of whichever corps of cadets that they are attending the academy of. So we have cadets who come here to the Coast Guard Academy from Colorado Springs with the Air Force, from Annapolis at the Naval Academy, from West Point. And we also send some of our cadets out to each of those institutions, both during the fall semester and during the spring semester of your second class year. There are some limitations regarding some of the majors, because some classes are only taught at certain times of the year, and some academies have vastly different academic programs than we do here. So in some cases you have to kind of finagle and make sure that the puzzle pieces all fit together if you really are passionate about going to experience another academy. But in many cases we can make that work if that is something you definitely want to experience as part of your cadet experience here at the Coast Guard Academy.
Dr. Adgerson, you play a large role in the Academy Introduction Mission, or AIM program, over the summer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's very, very difficult for anybody to select a college. And in particular, the service academies are very unique, and the Coast Guard is obviously very, very unique. And so what it does is it gives you a taste of academy experience. You have a combination of an introduction to basically a boot camp swap summer experience overlaid with some engineering projects. It's a very tough week, and what I found, I spent 4 summers as the engineering director for AIM, and what I found is at the end, one, a great sense of achievement, and often more clarity whether it's the right fit. Many people come through it, appreciate the Coast Guard Academy, and find it's not for them, and others, they feel they have found a home.
Suppose a cadet has to leave early for an athletic commitment or something like that. Would teachers work with you, or how would that work?
Teachers on the whole are very flexible, and we understand that at the Coast Guard Academy it's not just academics. Academics is a huge, important piece of what you do here, but there are also military obligations. There are club meetings and club events. There are sports. So as long as there is an open chain of communication, and there tends to be, again, because we have such small class sizes, you really get a lot of one-on-one interaction with your faculty. So on the whole, faculty members are very willing to work with you. If you need to make up a lab, for example, that happens a lot in science. We can adjust schedules. We can find a time to help you make up that assignment that you need to get to. And it also ties in with getting extra help as well. If you miss a lecture, you've let the instructor know ahead of time, and if you need some help getting caught up on that material that you missed, the instructors are still there as a great resource, and they're willing to sit down and make sure that everything is clear so that you can build on to the next concept as you progress along in the course.
But we work with our students in every capacity. Even those of us, the civilians who are not required to come in evenings and weekends, we do that all the time. Personally, I have now 3 of my students are sponsored cadets, and we have about 15 to 20 cadets coming over to my house on Sunday. And what you find is that's very, very common. When you become somebody's advisor, you spend a lot of time getting to know that student. But what you'll find is between that and the sponsored family program, people reach out in different ways. So I have a lot of students, for instance, I'm inviting, I consider them my advisees. They're not my technical advisees. As far as I'm concerned, they're still my advisees. Similarly with the sponsor family program. You hear of students who go to their friend sponsor families, or those who have effectively multiple sponsor families where they can go. And so we know, again, all our students very, very well. The bad news is can't hide. The good news, if their parents listening to this as well, we keep great tabs on your children, because we know what's going on, and we see them, we ask them, when we see them not smiling and they're having a bad day, we ask them, what's going on.
Does the Coast Guard Academy offer an aerospace engineering degree?
We probably should. It would be great marketing. It's funny, we talk about that all the time because so many of us have aerospace background. We have an aviator. We have many aviators assigned to the academy. We have an aviator assigned to engineering who happens to be mechanical engineering this time around, but who's assigned to engineering. I myself am a biomedical and mechanical engineer. From mechanical engineering, I spent my early career working on satellites, and later in my career, a lot of it working on helicopters, and that's similar to a lot of the other faculty. So there's a lot of aerospace knowledge. We do some very, very exciting aerospace capstone projects. I have a moment to mention a couple of them that we've worked on. But we do not have aerospace as a major. You can take aerodynamics as an elective. You can take a ground school class, but it's not a major. We stick to the pure majors that we have. Last year, we had a great project that was great in multiple ways. I was the project advisor. The first thing, from a personal level, wow, talk about a project I did almost no advising. These students just went, they made it their own, they were just phenomenal. They keep me up to date. But basically, what the project was for the smaller helicopter, to design a collapsible rescue basket. They do exist. The Coast Guard was not happy with this selection. So they worked along with our aviation folks down in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, to figure out what does a Coast Guard need. Now this was fantastic. They tapped into the aviators on campus to, again, to work on a design that would be more suitable for the Coast Guard. It was an incredible project. They started off, initial design with SolidWorks. That's a computer package to draw it. They were made in PVC pipe. They built things out of wood for the early prototype. And then Aviation Day, where we bring in a lot of pilots, we brought in Captain Dan Burbank, a retired Coast Guard who taught at the Coast Guard Academy, who's an astronaut. And when the helicopters were in, I met my students at Aviation Day, because I'm bringing my family with me. It's just a phenomenal event. And they said, well, Doc A, we have good news and bad news. Is the bad news is our design doesn't fit. The good news is we'll figure out a way to solve it. And ultimately, they came up with an incredible design. They built it out of aluminum and then eventually stainless steel in the spring. And that's being tested down in Elizabeth City. We had another one for an aircraft where the flare tube launcher, to shoot a flare tube from a fixed wing aircraft, was really put in by the contractor, I believe, as an afterthought. And it was in the way of the mission pallet. So you want to roll a pallet on with what you need for a particular flight, and it was in the way, and it was very, very hard to take out and put back in. So what was impressive is they had to do a retrofit. It is being evaluated, I'm not sure the current status, with the Coast Guard, but it won a major innovation award. For those of you who were listening when I first started talking a few minutes ago, I mentioned we have 4 types of 3D printers. A 3D printer takes this 3D computer file and layer by layer builds up a physical model that we can test. Well, we had one when that group used it. They loved it so much and made such great use, they took their award, which I want to say was about $10,000, and said give it to the Coast Guard Academy to put it towards another style 3D printer, which then added another style printer, and now we're up to 4. So again, we don't have an aerospace major, but we have some solid courses to help those interested in aerospace.
What degree do you have when you graduate?
It's a Bachelor of Science degree, but you would have, which you would tell, again, future employees in the Coast Guard what major it was in.
Can you talk a little about postgraduate opportunities, both schools and scholarships?
Yes. There are a wide variety of places where you can fit in a postgraduate program after you've completed your 4 years at the academy. Each year there's a list that comes out with all of the programs in which you can be sent to graduate school. You apply for it through the Coast Guard. So there are a couple of steps to go along the way, just like many of you are applying to college now. For a postgraduate opportunity, you first apply through the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard chooses you for that graduate program. There's usually a list of primary selectees and then some alternates as well. So if you're selected at that stage, you'll then be applying to the graduate schools themselves. And for some of the programs, there is a particular school that the Coast Guard has developed a relationship with and has sent many people to in the past. Other programs, including the program I went through, which was physical oceanography, You have a little bit more flexibility, so there's a funding cap for the amount of tuition that the Coast Guard is able to pay towards your graduate school, and as long as you choose a school whose tuition is below that cap, you're able to go through without any other financial restrictions or needs put in place there. There is a payback program after you've completed graduate school, and the way it currently works, and keep in mind that this could change by the time that you're coming here and looking at postgraduate opportunities, but the way it currently works is that for your first year of graduate school, you owe 3 months of service for every 1 month of schooling that you receive. After that, it goes to a 1-to-1 ratio, so 1 month of payback for 1 month of schooling. So I completed a 2-year program in physical oceanography, and as a result, I owe 4 years of time back to the Coast Guard. And that's why I'm currently here at the Coast Guard Academy, is to make use of the physical oceanography degree to teach cadets classes related to physical oceanography and to meteorology. But the classes that are offered and the majors for postgraduate studies range from industrial engineering, chemical engineering, many engineering programs. There are science programs in oceanography, in fisheries management, history for instructors at the academy, company officer programs. So there is a huge array of postgraduate opportunities available to you after completing your 4 years here.
That program, along with the rotating military, is one of the reasons we have the best programs. When you look at civilian schools, the way they typically teach their classes, either use teaching assistants or they use adjuncts. A lot of the adjuncts are very, very, very qualified, but they only come in for an evening class. Our rotating military are basically our best officers. They're sent back to graduate school, then they come back and they give back. They call it payback to it, but they're really giving back to us by teaching. So they have relevant experience, they're absolutely current, they're current academically. We bring the superstars back, and those are the folks who are teaching your kids, along with some permanent military faculty who are great, who send back for their PhDs, as well as civilians who bring the industry and the outside experience.
Thank you for joining us and for sending in your questions this afternoon. Please stay tuned for the athletics department, which is going to be coming up next to provide you with some answers to questions about Coast Guard Academy athletics.